It's the So That Happened podcast, starring your favorite host, me, Cody. Who are you people? What do you do? And we're back. Finally.
I'm Emperor Tiger Star, and I'm about maps and stuff.
I'm Tristan, and I do Step Back History about history and stuff.
And hopefully, the podcast doesn't die like it did, what has it been, 3 weeks? I think it's
I thought it was like almost 4.
Yeah,
3 weeks sounds right.
It actually might, whenever the last Knowledge Hub video was, which I think has been a month. But yeah.
And Easter and stuff happened, so.
Oh yeah, happy East Orthodox Easter, everybody. That's a full week after other Easter. Anyway, yeah. So what we did we were trying to do 3 weeks ago was have a scenario about what if the nation that was once on South America called Gran Colombia, it's now made up of Venezuela, Colombia, and Ecuador, right? That's the 3.
Yes.
Yeah. We were going to imagine what if it didn't collapse and there was just this giant nation today. So we were trying to do that, but last time my internet shitted out on us and we kind of ended it unspectacularly. So let's continue it, or let's start over, because I completely forget where we were in that last conversation. And I think, Tristan, you had the best history about the entire thing out of all of us. So you want to take over?
Yeah, I'll do the quick, short history of it. So Gran Colombia is a country that was founded out of a series of wars of revolution in South America. Basically, South America was partially benignly neglected when there was a little issue of Spain basically being under occupation or run by Napoleon's cousin, conquered by Napoleon, that kind of thing. But then once Napoleon was done with, and then the old Spanish king decided to try and get his colonies back together, then the colonists who had been given a lot of leeway had actually revolted after that. And one of the big leaders, one of the most famous generals in human history, the George Washington of South America, is this man named Simón de Bolívar, person who's so famous that they actually named a country after him. And yeah, he was a big leader in a whole lot of series of conflicts that basically end with a lot of South America and Central America and kind of all of Latin America becoming more or less independent of Spain, at least the ones that were Spanish. And the situation we're in now that happened was Gran Colombia in our timeline broke up pretty soon after its founding, just because the way that South American geography works is that there's a few pockets of places where there's a lot of activity, and then there's a lot of hard to traverse distance between them, so it's hard to keep a country together. Sorry if I'm taking too long.
No, this is perfect.
No, that was just a music joke.
Okay. Yeah, so basically the Gran Colombia was not able to keep itself together, but there was other attempts at things like this too. Anybody who plays Victoria might remember that there was a United States of Central America for a very brief period of time. So there have been attempts. There were in decolonization movements to make these big countries, but yeah, the one that we're talking about today, Gran Colombia, never actually broke. It broke up very soon after its founding.
Yeah. So if we're going to imagine a scenario like this, it's not going to be the most realistic one, just so everybody knows. Disclaimer. But a thing I find funny about this is you can still see the sort of legacy that Gran Colombia has. If you look at all of the flags all the nations that once comprised it, Venezuela, Ecuador, and Colombia all share the same yellow, blue, and red. I think that's the color. That's the color of the flag. They all share that same sort of style, and it's kind of the last little legacy of it. Almost kind of like I think we have. I've been researching a lot of Pan-Arabism stuff, but all of the Arabic countries sort of have the same color scheme too. because they try to unify, and that's the thing I find kind of interesting about Gran Colombia. But anyway, um, let's get to where is the obviously the point of divergence is that it just doesn't ever collapse. Um, so how do you guys think the next sort of century plays out, assuming this is the rest of this 19th century? How poor little Gran Colombia will live in this American sort of imperial world? What's going to happen to it?
Well, if I could add, like, the way that a point of divergence could happen would be something about the lines of like Simon de Bolivar being a better politician than he was a general,
Mm.
and maybe being able to actually have some sort of decentralized type of government that actually works. It would be pretty tough with 19th century communications technology, but it could be done.
Somebody actually said in the chat, maybe if they had a more modern infrastructure system, so maybe railroads, something that people could kind of be connected better. I think that's something that could really, I mean, because South America, North South America is basically all jungle. So if you're trying to have a giant nation like Gran Colombia, it's probably only going to be connected by a few roads, and that's not very good for a vast nation. So if you're going to have that nation survive, it's going to need a pretty good infrastructure system.
Yeah, maybe even building the railroad is like a nation building project. Like they decide to join the ranks of big countries and build this like railroad system as like a first action that brings them all together. That like keeps it together.
I like that. That could work.
Yep.
So we're gonna go. Basically, I'm gonna assume, South American history. We're okay. So we're gonna progress. Probably the first few decades or so, we'll call those the nation building decades. So if it wants to stay together, it's going to need modern infrastructure. It's going to need to really sort of establish itself as its own independent state. Really, because of the size of it, there's only going to be two other rivals on the continent, which will be Brazil and Argentina. What do you guys think Brazil and Argentina are going to play a part, at least in the 19th century? How are they going to sort of interact?
I would say very little, just because the Amazon is just so massive. Brazil would be completely isolated from Gran Colombia without going all the way around via water.
Yeah, transversing the Amazon is extremely difficult. It's not even today. It's quite a feat, and so really any sort of competition or any sort of like diplomacy would still be in the way that I think that it still works, or that it worked for most of the South American history, which would be over, it'd be naval.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of its naval capabilities, it would have Panama still, because Panama would be a part of Colombia. So I'm guessing that early in its history, this whole Gran Colombia would probably interact with the Americans early on.
Yeah. So the Americans, well, in our timeline, the Americans basically, like the United Fruit Company, tried to push for that country to become independent so that they could build the Panama Canal through it. There's a whole thing. It's all really kind of, there's a lot of U.S. intervention in this period.
I mean,
The question is if they'll still be able to do it when Gran Colombia is presumably more powerful in this case.
I think it all depends on what's the type of military they have. I mean, if we're thinking that, this is a nation that by the time Teddy Roosevelt would, if he's still president, they would had to have a modern infrastructure just to stay alive as a country. And that in itself would completely change the entire dynamic of that. I mean, the Americans could still, the U.S. was the dominant power throughout all of the Western Hemisphere. Like, there's no way that any other nation, could win a war against them. But it's still going to be sort of that struggle and that deterrence. Like, this is a relatively large nation. This isn't like tiny little Colombia in our timeline that they could just bully. It's like 3 times the size. So I don't know if that'd be like as much of a deterrence, They probably still attempt it, but I think if anything would change, um, it would be the rebellion and the struggle for the canal would be, or the land at least, to build the canal between America and Colombia would be bigger, at least a little bit.
Well, because like what I'm thinking is
The
that
result's still the same.
like if Gran Colombia is more powerful, more integrated, whatever reason, there's no rebellion or it's less feasible to support it. We did have plans to maybe try to build a canal through Nicaragua because even though Nicaragua is wider, it has like a giant lake in the middle of it. So we would just have to build like 2 mini canals, and it would have essentially been the same thing. But then we just decided upon Panama years later.
Yeah.
So maybe in this case, like, we don't want to deal with Panama. Let's just keep going with Nicaragua.
There also could be some sort of, Cody, you like capitalism. There could have been some sort of like deal. Like maybe the U.S. gets the Panama Canal, but like it's some sort of like paid arrangement or something.
I mean, that could work. I'm just thinking that's not really what the U.S. is sort of. I don't think the U.S. really even struck deals with anybody in the Western Hemisphere. They mostly just kind of went and took the land and didn't really care about it. So maybe in like if the U.S. was really nice in this world, I could see that. But
well, if Gran Colombia is a lot more powerful, maybe the U.S. is forced to make a deal.
Well, yeah, but I mean they did it.
Just like bully them around.
But they did.
We tried to purchase Cuba.
I mean, we even sent guys into Mexico, like southern Mexico, and they would still basically take land. So I'm saying if we
those filibusters.
Yeah, the filibusters. So if they can't do that to even Mexico, I'm guessing Gran Colombia probably doesn't really stand a chance. But.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So somebody pointed out in the chat very rightly that, or at least hypothetically, that Simón de Bolívar had plans to also liberate like Puerto Rico and Cuba, which that would be a long and more protracted war. I'm not sure it's something that they could succeed at, but it does make me think though that where Gran Colombia would really start to butt heads with the United States, and it might lead to possible invasion of Gran Colombia by the United States, or at least like undermining of their national sovereignty, would be during that period where the U.S. was really imperialistic.
Oh,
like after Spanish-American War, dealing with like Puerto Rico, Cuba, and
you know what? I think we're going to need a bigger shtick for these guys.
Probably. And I mean, if there's any, this is the problem with the U.S. ever interacting with anybody in the Western Hemisphere, is it's always going to end in the U.S. winning. But I think that would be, at least, I mean, that would be a problem. I mean, now I'm thinking about it. Oh, the U.S. would probably have a very vested interest in Gran Colombia, not just because of if they did try to invade Cuba and Puerto Rico and liberate that early on, but
a medium-sized power also in South America might be a way for somebody to circumvent the Monroe Doctrine. Was there any big rivals of Spain?
Not.
I mean, by
really.
the 19th century, Spain was kind of so past its prime that everyone's just like, eh.
Yeah, like Cuba and Puerto Rico were only really there because, Spain just kept them around. And then it wasn't until they actually really started taking the revolution seriously, which is when the U.S. was like, hey, this is a pretty good place to help out and liberate. We'll do that. So, I mean, Brazil didn't really become relatively strong until the 20th century. Argentina, if anything, was probably the closest contender. But it's like, even if you play I don't want to bring Hearts of Iron into this, but even if you play Hearts of Iron, like if you're
those
South
Ecuadorian
America,
sometimes
mountains.
like if you get in a war with somebody for many, many years, and then lose more people than you'd lose in like several wars just trying to take like one province.
Yeah.
I mean, the only country in the 1800s that was even remotely a rival for the United States was Mexico, and we beat the crap out of them.
Yeah.
And really, once that happened, there was just going to be no turning back from that.
Yeah, like the U.S., I mean, the only country that's even the same size as the U.S. is Brazil, and like half of the country is just rainforest. So a lot of that has to do with just sheer population size, resources, and like there's no way any Latin American country can compete. So
I mean, we were lucky that half our country was literally just plains.
oh yeah,
Kind of makes it a lot easier to expand across.
yeah. I mean, imagine, man, what if it was all like Afghanistan level mountains, but just constant until you get to California? That'd be
We just make the state of Colorado, but over the entire Great Plains.
yeah, everything is.
Jeez.
Okay, so we reached Panama. Going into the 20th century, does Gran Colombia share the same fate as really every other Latin American country at this time? Like,
Somewhat, I have my doubts to that because like there's a couple things. Like one, in our Gran Colombia, it's a lot more integrated because you said that the railroads and everything like that. Second of all, it's more of a middle power in the world, or like, at least like a low middle power.
yeah,
Which a lot of the reasons why democratic countries in South America have issues keeping themselves stable is because Uncle Sam shows up with a few boys in black who trained at the school of the Americas anytime they try to do any pesky democracy. And so
And I feel like we could do the same for Gran Colombia. Because, I mean, it's
Yeah.
not bigger than Brazil. It's not bigger than Mexico. And it's not bigger than Argentina or Chile. Well, okay, I guess it's a little bit bigger than Chile.
I mean, yeah, like if we can do the same thing in Argentina, which has like, I think twice the population, even if
And literally every South American country has had a military junta, whatever it is, or a dictator at some point.
That's
So it could happen.
that's the sad thing is like no matter what Gran Colombia's great plan is, it's still kind of gonna get Monroe doctrined by the U.S.
Yeah,
It's just-
unfortunately, what's it called? As long as there's a United States and as long as there's a Monroe Doctrine, it's going to be really hard for there to be any sort of self-determination or democracy in
Man,
South America because it's quote unquote not a colony.
yeah. so that is
Pablo Escobar's empire would be double its size.
ooh. I mean, if considering Escobar actually survives, I could
There
see
might be
at least
something that
some-
comes out of the fact that like a country that has at least like a reasonably powerful economy compared to like other countries, like because having the most resources, because like Bolivia is one of the biggest silver exporters in the world,
Yeah.
and Venezuela's got that sweet oil.
Wait, are
I don't
we
know.
including Bolivia?
I thought Bolivia was part of it, but
No.
oh well, fuck me then.
I mean, there was kind of a weird thing where Simon Bolivar was president of Gran Colombia and Bolivia at the same time, but like his presidency in Bolivia was like a transition thing. Like, oh, I gotta go, so you better pick someone else while I'm here because I gotta go up to Colombia. And then he left after like a few months.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, here's the thing about Gran Colombia is like it was like this weird hodgepodge country that existed for the sake of fighting a revolution, and then kind of what it would become afterwards is so loose that it'd be really hard to think about this stuff.
Yeah, and that goes back to the whole infrastructure thing. And I mean, at that time, there's such a racial caste in South America too, that even within same countries, there's such a difference among people even in the same towns that it's like imagining such a country like staying alive. It would have a lot more internal problems than just what we've been saying.
Yeah,
but
it would have a lot of like nation building that it would need to do to build that kind of identity. And I mean, they could do it. I mean, the United States was a similar situation, and they did it somehow
yeah,
with like George Washington and stuff like that. So they could, deify Bolivar and like.
I mean, they still
like,
do.
Yeah, they still do. But like, you could see them
I
using that a bit more.
they probably
I think
have
part
to.
of what like unified the United States compared to South America is so much of South America is isolated by the jungles, but the United States, all the 13 colonies were along the coast and had a lot of trade.
Well, also there's a difference between vast woodlands and vast jungle. because jungle's
Yeah.
going to have disease. It's going to have panthers and all that fun.
Sure,
things.
but like what I'm saying is, since all the colonies were on the coast, not only was there a lot of trade, but if you wanted to communicate or go to another colony and you weren't willing to hike through that forest, you could just take a boat and go around it.
Yeah, I know.
But with Gran Colombia, I mean, they literally are separated by Panama until that canal is built. So you already have all these communities that are just going to be isolated.
Yeah, unfortunately, the colonial presence in these regions resulted in them not caring too much about building infrastructure and things like that, because they were building colonies, not countries. And this is sort of the reason why it's so hard for a lot of countries in Africa to get themselves get on their feet, because all of their infrastructure was built basically as a way to extract resources from them. So,
well,
you can
even
see this happening here too.
even now, with the Chinese quote unquote investing in Africa, they're just doing the 21st century version of that. Like Chinese roads and Chinese buildings for Chinese workers who go in and build these massive infrastructure projects in Africa, but no, don't think native Africans are going to do anything about that. They're not using it. So, yep, the cycle continues. But man, okay, so that's where we came up with. If Gran Colombia had somehow survived, it probably would have just been ended up like all the other countries in the 20th century and been,
Yeah, I will say, since all of us, none of us are really all that great at regional politics in South America in the 19th and 20th centuries. So there probably would be a hugely different dynamic in the stuff that's going on in that case. But
yeah, if we're going from a large scale international, I mean, if we had a lot of research and stuff, like if you gave us like a week, and probably we'd have at least a little decent idea of internal politics and stuff. But just from that's why we do it on the podcast, is just for the fun of it. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll put it on that. Anyway, I want to get to the second part. Let's get to the second idea. So we had an idea for a topic. Let's talk about what could have prevented World War II.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand Dux.
Gosh, that is that's really high up there in the smallest thing one of the smallest things that you could do, the smallest domino that you could flick to cause the biggest difference in geopolitics.
I mean, it's possible because the shot that got him was the third shot, I think, and they also tried to throw a bomb, but it missed.
Yeah. Now, I would say that there would still have been a World War I in that case, because it just wouldn't have been at that moment, because the reason why the Archduke getting shot caused World War I was because there was really high world tension at that point. It just would have looked really different, probably.
The guy has a fourth bullet.
Oh, it would have been, but it would have been if it wasn't Serbia, it would have been Greece, because Greece was trying to get more independence in that period, or something would have caused that tense situation to have broken in some way.
Archduke Franz Ferdinand gets assassinated in Paris instead. No matter what, he's just always gonna die. He can't.
Poor Archduke. That would have been interesting though if he would have lived, because Franz Josef, the emperor, died in 1916, so he could have become emperor relatively quickly since he was heir to the throne. And what was really interesting about Franz Ferdinand is that he actually had plans to federalize the empire that would give more local autonomy, which if that would have been the case, Austria-Hungary might not have fallen apart.
Yeah. A multicultural state.
Well, I wouldn't say might not fall apart. I mean, have you seen the Balkans?
Might have fallen apart under better, but a lot of the problems in the Balkans are because of this.
But for example, instead of it being Austria and Hungary, it would have been Austria, a little Slavonia. They'd still have a weird Czechoslovakia thing with Hungary. I know there's a map of it somewhere of what he planned to do, and he had a relatively lot of support from all the moderates.
Yeah.
So at least it could have had Austria live another generation or two.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go under the assumption that World War One still happens. Uh, there is, the Great Depression or the 1930s. Hitler, Mussolini, all that fun jazz. I mean, actually, okay, we'll go back. How about 1920s?
Okay. If
No.
I could, I think there might be one way to get around with, like, okay, you guys are a bit more good at this stuff than I am on this stuff, but the Peace of Paris, a lot of people blame like France really wanting to throw the book at Germany after World War One as like one of the reasons why we end up with World War Two.
Um,
Something in that.
Yeah.
so probably okay. Actually, yeah, that was a good point. If if the treaty had followed uh, Wilson's 14 points, I think you could have had you probably could have prevented World War One or World War Two. I think one of his things was basically, to force France to not have that revenge that they wanted. Of course, France ignored that. I think it didn't have the reparations, or maybe the reparations were a lot smaller. Uh, and there was also,
Fun fact: Germany paid off those reparations in 2010.
oh boy,
Yep.
um, yeah. So so I can't really word it well, but I would say that I agree with you, Tristan. If the peace treaty had just been a little bit kinder, um, because it was the loss of the war and it was the harsh sanctions for that sort of loss. Because near the end of the war, 1918, it could have went either way. It could have went between the Central Powers or the Allies. In fact, that the Allies won by just like that much, by just a sliver, and then they punished Germany like that. That anger was what kind of really fueled the Nazis' eventual rise.
Now, what if they could also have gone way harder? And if I recall, like this is the piece of World War II, but like didn't Stalin wasn't he kind of like this whole Germany being unified thing? It's obviously not a good idea. How about we like re-break up Germany?
Wait, stop. Are we still
wait.
talking about World War One or World War Two?
No, World War II, but like what if like that idea that Stalin had, let's re-break up Germany? Like
So we're talking after World War II.
yeah, I was just saying like what if that idea was used in the Paris peace
Man,
process? Where they were
So
like,
so for World War One then.
yeah, like if somebody took the
Oh,
post World War II idea and did it after World War One.
I think the French Prime Minister kind of wanted to go along those lines, but Wilson and the David Lloyd George kind of calmed him down.
yeah. France was rabid.
Because I mean, they could have done it. Because since Germany just unified in 1871, if they would have broken up Germany to Prussia, Bavaria, and all that stuff, that could have been feasible.
Yeah.
They could have, yeah, they could have tried because then, if there was any sort of anger, basically it'd be among a bunch of smaller angry states, and
Hitler just takes over Bavaria and just conquers all of Germany instead of Europe.
that'd actually probably be it. It'd just be Bavarians would be angry, and then everyone would just kind of laugh at them, and then be sad.
Either that or Bavaria falls to the Spartacus movement.
Yeah,
That would come Germany breaking up like that would be really interesting to study because of then the 20s was like all the big socialist movements and probably some of them would have fled.
Yeah, because the Spartacus movement was in Bavaria, so if it weren't for the unified German Weimar army crushing them, then they could have just taken over Bavaria before Hitler did, maybe.
because it's like the whole 20s was practically a mini civil war between all these various cities, and
Which I posted a video of.
All right then, but if that happens, so then if we like, does World War II stop if we stop Nazism, or
yeah.
do we get my baby's first introduction to alternate history? Red alert.
I feel like that World War II would have still happened. It would have just been completely different because there's Japan.
I think we probably would have had this. We probably would have had fascism wouldn't have risen nearly as much. I mean, we still would have had it in like Italy, probably not Spain because they wouldn't be funded by Germany. But what we probably would see is like like you said, red alert. I don't know if it would lead to a war. At least I hope it wouldn't lead to a war, because if there was a war between the West and Russia, Russia is gonna win. Like there is no way that the West would be able to survive against a war against the communists. At least like a traditional, regular war, like what Germany fought against Russia as. There is no way that millions of Americans and Brits and French would die in, sort of Siberia and stuff. And it's like, what's the end
result?
The
United States, Japan, maybe China, and the Western allies attack Russia until we get an atom bomb and then just nuke Moscow.
Yeah. Okay. So.
Okay. But is that inevitable? Is that like what would happen? Do you think that? No. Without the fascist influence that the Soviet Union would...
I don't think it would. I still feel that World War II would have risen out of Japan, because Japan was going to go expansionist no matter what. And since technically they attacked the British, the Chinese, and the Americans, that still would be a world war.
Not
it
really.
Would just be a lot smaller.
No, and since we're on, there's another solution for stopping World War II, which was the one that Red Alert was based on, which is Einstein invents a time machine and goes back in time and erases Hitler, and he comes back and World War II is still happening. But
but what's it called? Going back to the one thing, I think so Germany's broken up, assuming to not have the Red Alert thing. I don't think that it wouldn't be called a world war if we went to war with Japan. I think it would just be a
Great Pacific War.
Yeah, it'd be like a skirmish. It'd be like not a skirmish.
Well,
it wouldn't be a skirmish, but it would be like, actually, you know what? I think it kind of would, because the only reason the U.S. was basically fighting Japan with its hand behind its back the entire time. Like it was basically completely. It was mainly focused on Europe. At least until, Hitler fell, and then they were like, okay, we're going to do this.
Think about it this way. The United States, of course, gets attacked Pearl Harbor. The United States didn't actually land any troops in like any fighting in Europe / North Africa until late 1942.
Yeah, I know.
And by mid-1942, Japan had conquered all that it was going to conquer in World War II. Yeah. So Japan still would have expanded as far as it would have, and we would have still had to have island hopped and fight man-to-man.
Yeah, I know.
So even if it would have been a little bit shorter, I still wouldn't think it would be a quicker skirmish.
Yeah, you're basically saying like this is like one of the things, this is one of the quirks about World War II that this kind of exposes, and this is something I kind of I've always thought, which is World War II looked really, really big, mostly because it was two wars that were happening independently at the same time.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of the common conception, is that Japan sort of did their own thing, Germany did their own thing, and then everyone was saying, hey, guys, stop doing that, and they had a big old slap fight after. That's what it was. It was a big old slap fight.
Here's an idea. We go back in time, go to the Munich art school, hold up a gun to the proctor and say, you will let Adolf Hitler into art school.
Yeah.
I will be the one who will personally accept him into art, and I'll be like, congrats.
This is like, yeah. This is just, it all reminds me, because I'm very glad that making a reference to Red Alert is not too old, but I guess it's because it's a bunch of alternate history fanatics that it's the only reason why.
Everybody knows. I mean, that was how I think I got into alternate history, was Red Alert 3. Not 1, but 3.
Okay, because I played Red Alert 1 when I was like a kid, and I was like, I'm not even 100% sure you were born yet.
I never played it.
That was the first time I ever knew the concept of alternate history, except I didn't know it was called alternate history. And I was just kind of like, oh shit, Japan has giant mechs and Kirov reporting and all that fun jazz. And
there you go. You need a video, like those like lore videos that your Godzilla thing. You should do like Red Alert.
Oh my god, I should. Why did I not do that before? That would be so awesome. I'm gonna do that. At least in the next few months. That will be. That'll be so good. That's so good.
Okay. So people are asking in the chat what it is. Red Alert was a RTS that came out in the mid '90s. It had a couple sequels that came out in the late '90s and early 2000s, and it was a real-time strategy that had an alternate history scenario where Einstein, in the 40s, like during World War II, invents something called the chronosphere, which is a time machine, and he manages to go back in time and meet Hitler like in the 20s, and basically kills him, like erases Hitler from history.
Mm-hmm.
He comes back to the 40s, and what's happening is World War II is still happening, but it's like the Allies versus the Soviets. But the Soviets, without the challenge of Hitler, like got into like Nikola Tesla stuff, and like all this like mad science went amok, and it's all crazy.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
Red Alert 3,
the death ray.
And then Red Alert 3 is pretty crazy. It takes place in the 90s when the Soviets are on like the brink of collapse, the last day of the Soviets. And so I think it's the Soviet leader and then one of the generals. Basically, they take a time machine back to erase Einstein from history, and they do. And they come back to the 90s, and they find out that Japan is basically the super technologically advanced nation, and they're on Russia's shores preparing to invade. And there's
the more sequels it gets, the more goofy it gets.
It's like, amazing.
By Red Alert 3, the Emperor of Japan was played by George Takei.
It was fantastic. It was
beautiful.
It was fantastic. And it was the freaking president was J.K. Simmons, and they had fake advertisements for his presidential campaign, and it was the most American thing ever, and I teared up. It was so beautiful. But yeah, Red Alert.
You definitely need to make like a lore video of the Red Alert timeline. I think
I'm going to. I want to. I'm going to do it. Man. Okay. How about still listening to the Red Alert soundtrack? That's the Victor moment.
I'll be willing to supply your Russian accent voices. It's just as bad as they are in the show or in the game.
My friend always used Kirovs, and always would, no matter what tactic I used, he'd always send over like 20 Kirovs, and they just slowly sort of, it'd be like a wave. It'd be a wave of bombs.
What's so great about Red Alert is that it like, they like basically say that nuclear bombs were never invented because World War II never happened, which doesn't make sense, but whatever. So what happens is all of like the developing science of the early 20th century gets developed to the point of craziness. So like the Kirovs are like battle blimps and like Tesla coils, like these big electrical things that just like electrocute people who come too close. And like I think the Japanese had like helicopters that transformed into mechs and like samurai with like lightsabers.
Yeah, they had and then they had the giant monkey samurai cyborg robot. That thing, oh god, it was like a 5-10 story tall mech that they had. They had the soldiers that were in the ground, and they looked like giant mushrooms, and they'd pop up, and they had these laser cannons, and
yeah. And I remember there was also the Soviets had the second one focused on like psychic powers, and like the game obviously embraces that it's goofy as shit, and that's what's great about it.
Oh yeah.
Because like in the second one, like there's like this psychic Rasputin kind of character who like defects from the Soviets and runs away and builds a colony on the moon with a bunch of clones of himself.
and then they had the Japanese version of that, and it was just a schoolgirl, except she was like psychic also, and they made an entire campaign off of that. Man, I
want this video. I want to be part of this video. I want to be a voice in this video. I don't know what it is.
You will. I guarantee you will. Oh man, I want.
But to be fair, it's really important in like the genre we're talking about, because Red Alert was for a lot of people, especially people my age, the first introduction to alternate history.
Oh yeah, like it was my first real-time strategy game too, and that game is so influential to me. Crazy. And then EA had to shut down the servers for it.
Yeah, Westwood went under, didn't it?
It hurts so much, so much. But I love that. Oh wait, we were talking about World War II, weren't we?
Preventing World War II. All right, let's settle the red alert question. I guess is the big thing. Is that if there is a way of stopping fascism and stopping Hitler, do you not end up with a war against Stalin?
I think Stalin, in many ways, was kind of a coward. Like he liked sort of, acting like he was big and tough, but when it actually came to it, I mean, even Hitler, who was avidly anti-communist, he still made a deal with him, and then he, was like surprised when Hitler invaded. So I think that for him, he'd sort of hate on the Americans, but in most ways, he would probably just focus on purging people on the inside. So
someone's gonna kill me.
The person we would probably have to worry about is if Trotsky won. If Trotsky won, I was having a conversation with my friend yesterday. If Trotsky had won, he'd be the one who'd be focusing on spreading sort of the world revolution. And
the permanent revolution, as he called it.
Yeah, and that's when we would have to have. That's when a World War II between the West and communism really would be a thing.
Because he already did do that, because he led the Soviet forces into invading Poland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it also kind of would. I just realized this because so much of the Soviet Union was shaped by World War II. Like they're like being hardcore and like having like this like indomitable military and all that kind of stuff is a reaction to the fight against the Germans, because like for the first like few weeks of the war, weren't like the Germans like really winning, and like Stalin like locked himself away for like 2 weeks and didn't talk to anybody. And it was
yeah.
It was like they like dug in the sand, and like Stalin like decentralized and like took like old generals who had been put in gulags. He like pulled them out of like prison and like put like officer guards back up on them, and like it was like there was a big restructuring of the Soviet Union to fight the fascists that kind of carried over into how the Soviet Union would continue in that fashion.
Oh yeah, like the only reason Russia even won was because Hitler thought, hey, it'd be a good idea to go after Stalingrad, which was really of no strategic importance compared to Moscow. And that probably is the thing that saved their asses.
I'm digging deep into my Dan Carlin right now, because Dan Carlin did his whole Ostfront thing, and I remember he was saying that over World War II, like the Soviets became more decentralized in their military structure, while like
the Soviets,
the Germans
Union,
the Germans became more focused and more centralized, and Hitler became more and more hegemonic, and like that was when Germany started to kind of suck, and the Soviets started to get really good.
Yeah, Hitler, Hitler was ironically the thing that brought down Germany. Is I forgot how many tactical ideas he had that were just horrible, but nobody said anything against it, and they lost. And then he would blame the generals. And, there are so many. You guys can look it up if you want, but there's so many examples. I can't think of them off the top of my head. But that was
that history. That was brought to you by Ting.
Hey, we should go to Moscow. No, let's go to Stalingrad. I think Moscow. No, let's go to Stalingrad. Well,
they were like,
hey, how did you lose Stalingrad, you idiot general?
Yeah, they were like only like 100 clicks away from Moscow at one point, weren't they?
Yeah,
they could see the Kremlin.
They were right there, and instead they thought it would be for some sort of victory to take this random city because it said Stalin on it, and that sure didn't backfire at all. Oh boy!
And then what's it called? Mr. Judd kicked their asses with his sniper rifle.
Oh, yeah.
Jude Law, that was it. Jude Law beat them with a sniper rifle.
I think Judd Law is a better name. That's his name now, Judd Law.
If any of you haven't seen the Downfall movie, like that movie where all the Hitler rant memes come from,
I love Downfall.
It's actually a really good movie, and there's a lot of good examples where even as the Soviets are diverging and invading Berlin, Hitler is like overriding his generals to flee. He's like, no, we can take all these tens of thousands of soldiers we don't have and do a pincer movement. But
the scene
anytime his generals would override him and say like, oh no, you should flee west and make a deal with the United States while you can. He goes, no, you're just an idiot. I know better than you, and just kept trying to do all these futile attacks.
and it's like I think that was the best sort of movie to show sort of what happens when an ideology dies, because you can see people fighting between something that they've been so avid about for basically most of their lives. And
what I don't get is why is he so mad that he got banned from Xbox Live?
I mean, hey, if you're trolling on it, saying a bunch of offensive stuff, yeah. I'm sorry, Hitler.
Don't worry, he'd be fine on Twitter.
He'd be fine on.
Oh.
Man, he'd get. Do you think
you get a blue check mark? So fast.
Yeah. Do you think Hitler would get a blue check mark?
Hitler.
Blue
check mark.
I saw a guy who had 2,000 followers get a blue check mark. I have no idea why. He was a writer for GT or QT or whatever the JQ.
Or no, GQ. JQ is the Nazi thing. But Hitler would be the writer for JQ.
Yeah, it's a G. I don't know, but it was one of those freaking dying websites, and he had.
I think that a lot of news websites will get all of their staff writers verifications.
I want a blue check mark just because it makes me feel like
I want a blue check mark too. And
yes,
I don't. Do I even have a check mark on my YouTube? I don't think I do.
I think you do. Do you?
Do I?
You usually get it soon after getting 100,000.
I think I do.
Well,
I do.
Okay, check mine and see if you can see it, because I don't know if maybe it's because I'm on my own channel and I can't see it, but I don't see it.
I don't think
Hitler would get his blue check mark. You would be like, "Nine, I am nine a Nazi. I am parts of the Alt-Reich."
You would see it. You would see if you had a check mark. You'd see it.
I don't see it then.
Oh well. Okay, so we have Germany split up. We're gonna move on to, let's say, Hitler and Mussolini and the whole gang's all here. Is there any way that war is prevented, or is it too late once they actually get into power? I mean, Mussolini's fine. But Hitler, as soon as Hitler and the Nazis get into power, because they're the driving force.
Okay.
I have heard over and over and over and over again until he has the entire world. There you go.
Yeah. There's also now this would actually be technically World War II, but I do recall there's a lot of criticism of British policy in early World War II, specifically not doing a whole lot, and that if the Allies had if the British had not focused so much on making sure their colonies weren't rebelling and actually focused on defeating Germany, they could have done it a lot sooner, but I'm not 100% sure on that
one. There was that Winston, I think the Winston Churchill movie that just came out, Darkest Hour. It's a little weird in its presentation, but I'd recommend it just because it's really funny. I mean, it's not funny, but you sort of see where the British are and their mindset, that this is the worst thing that they'll have to possibly do. They are dealing with a force that can't be reckoned with, but they still sort of convince themselves that they can. And in their mind, if you go against that, they're basically calling Churchill a warmonger and a crazy man. And I find it funny sometimes in history how the crazy guys, the quote unquote crazy guys, are the ones that are needed in that situation, because nobody else is willing to, sacrifice so many people. And actually, I'd recommend Darkest Hour because it really plays into how much, in case you didn't know, Winston Churchill's actions led to a bunch of men dying in World War II at Gallipoli. And
World War I?
World War I. Yeah, sorry. But basically, that was a thing. All those men dying, he never was able to live down. Even when he became a prime minister, they would basically just push that on him, saying, "You want to send more men to die, just like they did in Gallipoli." And it's sort of. I forgot where I was going with this, but I was saying Darkest Hour is a great movie. You should probably go watch it. If you're going to, do a double feature with Dunkirk, because it is it takes place literally at the same time as Dunkirk, and that's like the central plot. So watch Darkest Hour and Dunkirk at the same time.
I haven't seen either of them.
I don't know where I was going with that. I just really like the movie. You brought that up, so.
Reminds me to
Dunkirk
watch
is a good movie. Go see it.
I've been wanting to see The Death of Stalin, so I've been sitting on that one.
I want to see that too. I heard it was really good. They only had it in select theaters though.
Yeah, I never got to see it.
But what's his name? Khrushchev's played by Steve Buscemi. Like, yes.
And it has Michael Palin from Monty Python. Who wouldn't want to go see that?
Yeah, that works. Okay, so yeah, you guys want to? I mean, we're around like the hour mark. I guess we could start getting into questions. You guys want to do that?
Sure. Let's pay some cues.
Okay. So, hey, if anybody's listening, we are taking questions on our Twitter, which we might not see, but we will definitely answer every question that we get in the super chat. So, guess throughout the next hour or so, how long we do this. If you have a question and you really want us to answer it, just do it in the super chat or on Twitter. So
the Twitter would be to write. It's #AskSTH.
Yes, or you could go onto my Twitter.
Or reply to his tweet.
Yeah, reply to my tweet. I have a thread there. So we have. I'm gonna read this first, just so I can kind of think about it. Okay.
I think a lot of questions about this mod for Hearts of Iron.
Okay, so I think we could kind of turn this into a thing about how democracies work. Derek Trammell asks, where has the U.S. succeeded in its system for a long-term democracy that those Latin countries couldn't perpetuate or do?
Not being invaded / influenced by another country.
Yeah. Not having the School of the Americas really, really helped the United States.
I think the reason why democracies can work is only if the society is stable, and only if the nation is strong enough to defend itself. And my cat is annoying. I am just hearing it meowing. Yeah, so you can have a democracy, but if that democracy can't defend itself from outside forces and it gets corrupted or overthrown or whatever, that's not going to create a healthy long-term system. And I mean, that's pretty much the simplest thing, is the U.S. basically sabotaged any other Latin American democracy that at least went against them. So
the only other thing I can think of is that the United States has a very strong judicial system, and a lot of South American countries either did not have one, or if they did have one, it wasn't as strong as our Supreme Court. Or in some cases, maybe they do have a strong Supreme Court, but they've only built it within the past 50 years.
Yeah, the U.S. also got very lucky that after the revolution, it was at the end of a very, very long supply chain that it would be very costly and very difficult for any European country to have invaded them. Like, if the United States, for some reason, was 40 miles off the coast of Europe, it would have, some other European country would have tried to take advantage of the situation. But because it was so far away, it was able to able to have that distance and succeed in that sense.
Yep. It's also how South America broke away in the first place.
Yeah. And the problem is that the United States had when the South American countries got their independence, the United States was right there, and so they were getting intervened with right from the beginning.
And to prove it, the one country that we did not succeed in invading that still has a stable democracy in the entire Western Hemisphere is Canada.
Man, that's annoying. Oh boy. All right. So next question. Steve Preston asks, if Poland ceded Danzig, would World War II be averted? No.
No.
Pretty simple.
I wanted the corridor, not just Danzig.
Yeah, that's the simplest I think that's the simplest way we could say that. Thomas, this isn't a question, but I think this is kind of funny. Thomas Moraldorf says, how about instead of hurting Hitler, we raise him to be a benevolent human being that doesn't hate Jews?
Aww.
Oh, that's yeah.
I mean, he actually didn't develop a hatred until adulthood, so that wouldn't have mattered.
Okay.
Yeah, you would have had to like come to his side when he was like recovering from the mustard gas attack and like treat him the value of humanity and stuff like that as he recovered. It would be a very sweet story, but like that's the point when you would have want to get him.
That's another one. Go to that French soldier who rescued Hitler from the mustard attack and say, no, leave him.
That doesn't seem very like saving him. Okay, Justice McGinnis asks, can we get to the bottom of the Tiger Star?
No.
He called him Tigger Star.
The last time. No, I am not one. Gosh.
What he yiffs in the privacy of his own home is of no business.
Tristan, you're dead to me.
That's funny. Morph Asin says, Cody, I've had it with posturing and broken scheduling. I'm so angered, I declare a coup d'etat. Who shall join me? I have a life that's not just the channel. In fact, I'm working on a book right now, and it's something that takes a lot of time. And I don't know if I've said, but I've been moving my videos to every 2 weeks if I can.
Every fortnight.
Every fortnight. So that's. I mean, it's not really broken scheduling. I don't think I've had an actual schedule since like 2014. So it's mostly if I can get a video out, I'll have a video out. And sometimes that can be weekly. Sometimes that can be bi-weekly. Mostly depends on my schedule. And right now, the book is taking up a lot of the time. So sorry about that.
Those take a bit of time.
Well, okay. Let's see. Justice
Super chats.
Yeah, Justice McGinnis says, what if America went to war with Mexico and Russia? How would Europe respond modern time? I think if America went to war with Mexico, Europe would probably only respond with sanctions.
There's no real military that could respond in any significant way.
If they went to war,
is that like this whole thing is like the context in which that happens means so much to the scenario. Like, how is the United States invading Mexico and Russia?
What if Mexico got and take over by like a cartel, and that's how?
Yeah, see, I feel like that a lot of countries would just step back and let us do it because the amount of guerrilla warfare we would have to deal with would be absolutely insane for Mexico.
This is modern times, right?
It says modern times.
Look at how they're handling the drug cartels now, or rather how they're failing to handle that. If we invade Mexico, we would literally unite every single person in that country to resist. I mean, and it would make Vietnam look like a walk in the park.
If we did...
You said the U.S. invading Mexico and Russia, right?
It said went to war.
Well, Mac is all that.
Europe's response would be dying, like everybody else on.
We'd all die, that's why I was trying to separate the two.
Maybe as the nukes are flying off between America and Russia, maybe Britain and France are like, "Oh, but I want to press the button too if we're all going to die," and then they do it too. But other than that, I can't imagine any response.
So that works. Thomas Muhldorf says it's pronounced Muhldorf. See, I got it the second time. Oh boy. That was
take a break. That
was literally the thing he said is just correcting me on the pronunciation I had. Everett says, what if the Toledo War sparked the U.S. Civil War? So I think it was a good time in case I don't think anybody really knows that much about it.
I have a master's degree in American history, and I don't know this.
Oh, you don't? Okay, so this is actually kind of a little bit of a local thing. So when basically this is the story of the birth of the rivalry between Ohio and Michigan. And it all started over a little skirmish of my hometown. So basically, back in, I think it was 1809. It might be like 1809, 1808. I don't know. Actually, I'm gonna look this up right now. I'm gonna see what this, because I forget actually when it was fought. Oh, it was 1835. Okay, never mind. Yeah. So basically, in 1835, Ohio was a state and Michigan was not. And back then, we didn't have actual maps and stuff or GPSs and stuff like that. So people, when they measured the Great Lakes, they measured it wrong, and they had Lake Michigan far more south than they previously thought it was. And the agreement was Michigan and Ohio's border would be at the southernmost tip of Lake Michigan going east. Well, what ended up happening was that Lake Michigan was far more north than they previously realized. So that meant Michigan got less land and Ohio got more. So a fight began. Ohio wanted, it just so happened that this little bit of land, just from like the few miles that were, that ended up being shifted, was in this region called the Toledo Strip. It wasn't really made up of anything at the time. It was just like swamp and stuff, but it was on Lake Erie, and it was valuable lakeshore property. So if basically Michigan wanted more lakefront property, and so did Ohio. So what ended up happening was when Michigan tried to be a state, they sent more. The United States basically said, "Okay, guys, you're going to have to settle this out and see where your state borders actually are." Ohio and Michigan didn't really settle it well, and long story short, eventually it ended with both of them bringing their militias to try to settle the dispute. By that time, the city of Toledo was nothing more than a fort, and there were a few little towns. And I forget how it went, but I think it was, don't take my word on it, but I think it was people at the time thought that they were Ohio citizens, and they said that they were Ohio citizens, but Michigan militias would come down and basically occupy the territory. And they said, you can't say that you are a citizen of Ohio. You can't vote in Ohio. Actually, I'm going to look this up because I think I might.
Those Michigan militias always stirring shit up.
Prelude. Okay. I'm looking. Man, I remember this. I'm thinking. Okay, so anyway, yeah. So basically, what ended up happening was one state was basically saying you can't act like you're citizens of this state, and both states got pissed, and they ended up shooting at each other across the river, and it was called a war, but it really wasn't. But there was gunfire, and it ended in like one person being injured, so it wasn't like anything. But the only reason why both of the militias didn't kill each other was because the entire area was a swamp, like Louisiana swamp, and it took them like 2 weeks to get to each other, even though it was only like a 100 miles. Yeah. Anyway, because of this whole thing, Ohio eventually won out in the end because Ohio was a state. And
if I went to Michigan, would they also say that?
No, well, actually, this is the thing. in the conflict, Ohio was in the wrong because by the determinations that they originally had, Michigan was actually supposed to get the land because just the way that the map was, Michigan was actually supposed to get that little strip that was Toledo, but Ohio had the political power because they were a state to flex their muscles, and the Congress forced Michigan to give up the land. But to compensate Michigan, they gave them this little upper peninsula that nobody was going to use, and that's how Michigan ended up getting the upper peninsula, and Ohio got Toledo.
Man, I should make a video on this.
I did. I made it on Knowledge Hub. I
should, like a map video.
Yeah, you should. But the funny thing was
the Toledo War every day.
But the funny thing is that there was because there was this Ohio nationalism. The governor at the time, who absolutely hated Michigan, his name was Robert Lucas, and so the county that ended up being Toledo was named Lucas County in his name. So it was a little bit of state nationalism. But this hatred between the two states ended up manifesting itself because of that. And that's where the name Wolverines comes from, is Ohioans called Michigan people Wolverines because it was seen like a weasel, like a rat dog. Like it was dirty and it ate meat and shit, and it was like a filthy animal. And then Michigan people basically took that as a compliment, and they're like, okay, well, we're Wolverines. And that's how we ended up getting the Michigan Wolverines.
Funny story, I almost was a Wolverine.
Really?
I almost did my MA at UM Arbor.
Oh man, we'd be enemies. But anyway, yeah, I will say that as a Buckeye, Ohio was wrong in the conflict, but I don't think anybody today would want to fight over Toledo. I think Michigan ended up winning in the end on that.
They already have to deal with Detroit. Do they really need anything else?
No, they don't. Oh man,
Poor Michigan.
It sucks that I can't remember the actual. I can't remember the actual who took over the specifics, but yeah, it ended up. It was so weird. Like this was a thing that lasted like 3 decades. Like there were people that just lived in Northwest Ohio and they didn't know if they were Michigan or Ohio people. And
step aside, bleeding Kansas.
and there's something called the battle. I'm like looking up on Wikipedia right now, and it says that there's something called the Battle of Phillips Corners, and it's just funny because none of this is actually like. It's not actually like a battle. It's just mostly drunk people firing shots.
Because it's like a bar fight.
Yeah, it's just a bar fight, and the war could basically be like sheriffs and policemen.
No, that one time I got in a skirmish with this guy who was looking at me cockeyed all night.
There's a picture on Wikipedia of the two governors shaking hands for a truce to the conflict in 1950.
Yeah, there is. Oh man. That's funny.
That's great. It's like this bitter war between our states. It must end. Oh, well, I don't know. We've only lost 3 people. No.
I'm looking.
This conflict has affected us all.
Oh, actually, you know what? I'm gonna pull this up because I think this is the map that I can actually describe it as. This is okay. So, basically, this entire conflict, and I know this is completely pointless, but this is something that I'm very fascinated in, and I want you people to be fascinated too. So, when they originally got the map for what the Great Lakes region looked like, they used something called the Mitchell map, which was made in 1787. And basically the entire idea was that the border would be south of Michigan. So the entire idea was basically Ohio would get like that entire area. And then it turned out that Lake Michigan was far more south than they originally realized. And, Michigan should have gotten then that. And so then it ended up that Michigan would have gotten that land instead. So that would have ended up being like all of what is today Northwest Ohio would have ended up being Michigan. And yeah, so it turns out they were actually right in the end. and we were not. Yep, all because of a map mistake. That's all it was.
Were there any masks in the Walmart? Just to go along to add to the story a bit.
Masks.
Never mind. Keep going.
Oh no, that's it. That's literally a story. That's it. That's all you need to know. It's so stupid. Okay, so Morphison says, what if Britain also colonized Mexico, or at least took it from Spain before the American Revolution?
There's no way.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, there really isn't, unless they devoted their entire army to doing it. There's just no way.
I mean, if Britain colonized Mexico, if Britain colonized Mexico, maybe that could be an interesting. Yeah.
I mean, Mexico just had so many people, there'd just be no way.
Yeah. Oh well.
Mexico had way more people than North America for quite a long time.
Justice McGinnis says, what if all of PewDiePie's subscribers were mobilized against all of Europe from Sweden?
Oh my.
They would just nuke them.
I would say
Justice McGinnis, by the way, great point.
I would say you can nuke a bunch of 12-year-olds. That'd be fun.
You know what? We're having an overpopulation and consumption
I
problem.
can't make fun. We can't. That's the thing.
I mean, between the Tide Pods and the snorting condoms, like his fans are already kind of weeding themselves out of the population.
PewDiePie fans aren't as bad as they used to be. PewDiePie's not as bad as he used to be, but
he was never good in the first place.
I think he's gotten better. He's gotten funny recently.
I haven't seen him in ages.
It's pretty good. It's all right. I mean, it's not like.
But in honor of the kids and PewDiePie's fans, I will now spin a fidget spinner.
It's not like the greatest.
To show how cool and hip I am.
It's funny how we can hear it. We can hear that.
You can hear the fidget spinner?
Yeah.
It almost sounded like you were lighting a lighter.
Okay, so I'm going on the Twitter comments now. Somebody says, can we both agree that cats are superior to dogs?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay.
I'm
a dog person who was raised in cat homes my whole life. I really want a dog.
I'm going to say this. I own a cat. I love cats. But I think it really depends on like your living situation. If you're living in an apartment, I would say have a cat more. If you're out in the middle of nowhere, like if you're out in like a rural area, own a dog, because then yeah, because like if you're gonna have a dog in an apartment, I would never want to do that, because they're either gonna have to be like a super cramped big dog, or they're gonna be one of those little tiny rat dogs, and I hate those little rat dogs. You might as well own a cat if you're gonna own a dog smaller than that.
I want a pug, and pugs are
I'm sorry, my buddy has his family always has pugs, and they're just
they're the goofiest looking dogs ever. I love them.
They are. I'll give you that. I mean, as long as they're not a Chihuahua, that's fine.
Okay, I just this is a sensitive thing for me, because I've been wanting a dog my whole life, and my entire life, all we ever had was cats. My parents didn't want dogs.
Get a dog. Yeah.
I know. I'm not allowed.
You're not allowed.
I am part of a 2-person partnership called a marriage, and she doesn't want one.
Just get it as a birthday gift, and then it'll be like, surprise.
She would literally leave me if I did that.
You can't go anywhere. You're gonna doom the dog forever. Actually, I've been talking to Izzy about a dog, and she's like, no, I don't want a dog, but I'll whittle her down. I'll do it. I'll probably get one.
What's it called? You're probably gonna get a big ass place in Texas, right?
Except I'm not like getting an actual pug. I either want a German Shepherd or Doberman. Like a Doberman without the ears cropped. Those are like, I've fallen in love with those dogs. So either a German Shepherd or a Doberman. And German Shepherds, though, they have to deal with the heat, so I'm probably going to aim for a shorter hair dog. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Anyway.
Wait. Here's a compromise, Tristan. What you need to do is you need to get the breed of cat that is most like a dog, and that is a Maine Coon.
We actually have cats. We have 2 cats right now. So
Cats are
right
fine.
now,
Cats are
and
fine.
we live in a 750 square foot apartment. So honestly, I wouldn't want a dog right now either because there would be no space.
Cats are great for apartments. So it's like if you have, they're basically, it depends on your living situation. And dogs, it's mostly just because you're gonna have to take the dog out to shit or use the restroom and stuff. And like cats can just do it themselves. It's far easier. So. I'm lazy also, so I like the cat just kind of doing its own thing. Don't have to really worry, except for now because she's being a little retard.
And cats won't do the thing to where if you're trying to sleep, like a dog will just try to like jump on your legs and just like make it 500 degrees right there, and you won't be able to move, and it sucks, and you have to keep pushing the dog off.
Yeah, that works.
But cats are just like, we'll just sleep over here where it's more comfortable.
Okay, so Chris Casella says, which conflict was more pivotal, World War I or World War II?
World War One.
Yeah, World War One.
World War One caused World War II, so there's that.
World War,
but then there's the whole breaking down the World War One. I'm making a video about this probably in November because I'm doing this is the first time I've said it to anybody, but I'm doing an all World War One November because it's the 100th anniversary of the end of the war, which I think is a bigger thing to celebrate than the 100th anniversary of the start.
Oh damn!
That video better be uploaded on 11/11/11/11.
I'm thinking of it. I'm thinking of making a 11/11 video. One of the things I want to do though is talk about how World War One was basically the Victorian age. All the internal inconsistencies of the Victorian age collapsing in one gigantic spectacle of blood and iron and death.
Yeah, World War One was basically the start to the end to that sort of European colonialization mindset. And I mean, it wasn't the actual end, but it was sort of Europe's literal shooting itself in the foot that eventually brought its downfall. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of World War One. We'll go with that. We'll do World War One. Let's see. I think I already answered this before. I'm not going to actually say it because I've already said what the book is about. But somebody says, "What is the book about and called?" I think I can say what it's called, but it is the book is called
Tosca Love. It's a saucy romance between a walrus and a fair maiden who are banned by their parents. It's quite a departure from Cody's typical style of alternate history fiction because this one is quite real and it's quite a saucy romance.
It's better than Matt Santoro's book, I'll give you that. But
inspired mostly by 50 Shades of Grey.
I was just thinking, I thought, you know what, this speaks to me. And every time I write it, I just have a tear in my eye because it's so beautiful. No, but the book is called The Atlantropa Articles. And the central concept of the book is this is a world where the giant dam system that was imagined by Hermann Sorgel back in the 30s is actually built. And it completely transforms the history of Europe, the ideology of everybody, and it deals with, the concepts of Nazism and World War II never actually happening, and global peace, but at the expense of this ideology still existing. And I can't really go into so much detail about it, but it's a pure fiction book that goes into, I won't even really call it, eventually it's like alternate history because it goes into two different time periods. It goes from an alternate 1980s, which is the traditional alternate history, and then it kind of goes into so far in the future, it's like alternate fantasy almost. So yeah, it's a work in progress, and if all goes well, it will be out by October later this year. But more, I'm gonna have an official announcement video for it too. So look forward
While
to
we're
that.
talking about your creative output, I think I am not alone in saying that I unironically do want some alternate future hub videos.
No.
But Jimmy, that was a funny thing. Everyone was like, that wasn't supposed to be a joke that people were supposed to fall for. I was just like, man, this is such a crazy idea. Nobody's gonna possibly want this. Turns out everybody did. I don't know my audience at all. It's oh boy, oh no.
Yeah, like when I'm like, I'll just make a really short and simple Emu War video for April Fool's Day, and it ends up being my most viewed video in like a few months.
Yeah,
It makes me sad.
I'm sorry.
I really need I really need one of those. I haven't made an April Fool's video yet.
It's a tradition. It's probably
The best one is Geography Now, which they did one where they did a very, very convincing Geography Now rundown of a country, and everything made sense, and it was like really well done. And he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I made up this country. It's fake." And it was like,
oh, we did that last year. I remember that. That was good.
it was pretty clever.
That was pretty clever. Mine's
What was the made up country?
It was like some country in like the Indian Ocean that was made of like a mix of like Madagascarese and like Danish settlers or something weird like that. It was gotta find it sometime. If anybody in the chat knows what it is, I would love to know. If anyone knows the name of the country that was made up for Geography Now's April Fools.
I forgot what it was called. Boundary Break. Boundary Break did a really good one this year. He basically was acting like it was a normal video, but then all of the sort of. Do you guys know what Boundary Break is?
Nope.
He's basically a channel that takes the camera outside.
Oh yeah, Bandia Terra. That was the name of the country.
Oh, he takes the camera in video games basically out of bounds where you can see stuff that you're not supposed to see, and he was making a video that was basically just making stuff up. Like, did you know in Super Mario Bros. If you pan the camera over there, you can actually see New Donk City from Mario Odyssey? Whoa, crazy! And he had like an 8-bit like Super Mario Odyssey thing, and it was funny.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway,
I've also had a question. This is a good one. Is Tristan Jimmy?
Is Tristan Jimmy? No, Tristan is not Jimmy. Actually, did I? I don't think I ever said who Jimmy truly is.
Oh, I got a cool Easter egg about that, and that was one of our original plans for the internet net neutrality video. Was that in the world without the internet, Jimmy was going to get elected president? But anyways, continue.
Oh yeah, that was a little tidbit behind the scenes. I
always thought Jimmy was James.
I think so this is who Jimmy actually is. Jimmy is basically the mascot that I made for any annoying internet commenter. So, like, anybody who basically just is super annoying on my YouTube videos or is that annoying fan, that part of the community, I just call them Jimmy. And it's kind of that's why whenever I have somebody ask an obvious question or I have to basically shut them down in the video, it's like, okay, Jimmy, I'm gonna say this. You don't have to ask automatically because I know there's gonna be somebody in the video comment section asking that question, typing away. So that's where Jimmy came from. He's you. You are Jimmy. You all are Jimmy. We are
all Jimmy. Hashtag we are Jimmy.
We are Jimmy.
Cody, now you've just created a cult for Jimmy. That's going to just grow in numbers.
That needs to be a Coke ad. It would be like a Coca-Cola, like all the people and everything. It's like super happy, and it just says hashtag we are Jimmy, and then the Coke symbol. And yeah, do that for your Super Bowl. Let's see.
You're not Jiggy unless you're Jimmy. Sips Coke.
I guess we could do. I actually want to see how many good.
Man, I totally get this this fidget spinner thing.
I actually had a fidget spinner.
Then Izzy destroyed it.
Yeah, well, thank you for ruining the joke. Yeah, I unironically, I didn't do the fidget spinner because it was cool or whatever. but it was like they're addictive. They're actually kind of fun, and you just
I got a free one at VidCon. They were giving them away.
Yeah, and I was like, I had it, and I just put it in front of Izzy's face, like, hey Izzy, look at this, and then she picked it up and just chucked it into the darkness, and I never saw it again.
Oh my, that's intense. Was this like her just being mad or like scared? Like did you like surprise her, or did she
No,
like really
it was her really hating fidget spinners and throwing the damn thing away. So
Wouldn't it be great if somehow you just find it, like it's maybe a bit cracked, but it's still there?
Still spinning.
Okay. Ooh.
It's a great totem if you're in Inception.
I really like this. Okay, so we'll do two more. Actually, wait. I think we should probably say we're not submitting any questions on the super chat anymore. So if we don't get to that, nobody really asked any more questions, but I just want to clarify. So we're going to do two more questions, and then we're going to wrap this up. James Stockdale says, what is your favorite alternate history story? And I am thinking, because there's a ton. I would actually say probably my favorite, if we're going in terms of, I mean, I guess we're going to do story, can mean a movie, a book, a video game. Probably, this is going to sound stereotypical, but Man the High Castle, or,
Now, is this like your favorite alternate history, or your favorite like alternate history story?
Alternate,
your favorite
alternate history story, like a book, a movie, a video game, something that has to.
Because like Man in the High Castle, I think the scenario is cool, but I didn't quite care for the book that much.
I liked the book actually. I thought the book was, it's long. It's not that long, but it can get dry in parts. But I think Man the High Castle and I don't know. I mean, I would say I love Turtle Dove scenarios, but Turtle Dove books themselves sometimes are hard to get through. I think probably there's this Turtle Dove book about the states fighting against one another. And there is this war between Ohio and Virginia, and West Virginia.
Multiple wars.
Yeah, multiple wars. And West Virginia didn't actually exist. It was still absolved into Virginia. And that was pretty good. The only issue I had with that book, and why I can't say it's my favorite, is because it had a 16-year-old girl character, yet for some reason she had all of the knowledge of this world's history like a guy who was a 50-year-old historian. And that kind of took me out of it a little bit. Like, no,
you don't understand, Cody. She's the chosen one. She knows everything.
Like, she knows about the war that California fought like 200 years ago. Yeah, I'm sure somebody would care about that. Yeah, but how about you guys? What's your favorite alternate history story?
I would say it's Turtle Dove's book, Joe Steele.
Oh, Joe Steele. For those that don't know,
have you read that one yet?
I have. I know what it is, but for those that don't know what it is,
am I explaining the book or you?
You.
Oh, because for those who don't know.
No, I was saying like you say for those, you explain it.
Okay, so Joe Steele, which is the Americanized version of Joseph Stalin, because that's what that name means. Joseph Stalin's parents immigrate to the United States, and so Joseph Stalin is born in California as an American citizen. So instead of a corrupt and evil Joseph Stalin running the Soviet Union, it's a corrupt and evil Stalin doing American politics and becoming president.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that book. I think I read the review by Matt Mitrovich, which is if you're a fan of Alternate History Hub, go to the Alternate Historian, Matt Mitrovic. He's probably another guy you'd really like.
He's actually one of the first guys I ever talked to in this entire thing, so definitely go check that out. Actually, I can put that in the.
He's a baller. Matt Mitrovic is a really. If you like Alternate History,
he's like one of the main central people in internet alternate history. So, yeah.
But it's a great book. Like if you thought FDR's policies were really unusual and radical for the time, Joseph Stalin he's Joseph Stalin, so he goes even further than that. And then of course Trotsky ends up being leader of the Soviet Union because Joseph Stalin was never there. A lot of various tangents, which I don't want to spoil, but it's a very good book.
Yeah, I had Matt Mitrovic on my Subscriber Appreciation Day series of streams I do every month, and it was a really fun back and forth.
You should have me on one of your streams. That'd be fun.
I would totally do that. I do one every month, so yeah, I have Mike Stutchbury coming up this month, but next month, sure.
Cool, awesome. So
guys, subscribe to Cody. He really needs it.
Yeah.
I could do it for fun, not because I need it.
Yay, fun.
Yeah. Oh boy. Wait, are you telling me you guys don't do this for fun? You do this? You're using me? Oh no. Oh no. It's sad. Okay. So Tristan, what's yours?
I try to whittle it down to 3, and they're all really quick. So like 1 is the one we've already talked a lot about. That is the Red Alert story, because it's just so goofy and off the wall that it's great.
Yeah.
The short story A Sound of Thunder, which I think is like considered like one of the OG alternate history stories. Which, by the way, for those who so A Sound of Thunder was a short story about a group of people who are like paying money to go back in time and hunt dinosaurs at the time that they die, but the in the story some people accidentally crush like a bug or something, and they come back and like the presidential election happened differently, and it was a whole introduction to like that type of thing in time travel stories. And the Simpsons episode where he goes back in time and crushes a bug and all the weird stuff happens is based on that short story.
Oh, that's cool.
And the third, even though this is super controversial, I know it will be, the movie Fatherland.
Oh,
which is
I like Fatherland. I liked it.
I keep needing to finish the book.
So it's a movie. The movie. I don't know what the book is about, but the movie is basically a thriller about a journalist who goes to. It's a World War II Hitler one. Yeah.
That's the book.
Yeah.
So BBC journalist in the 60s goes to Germany to see Hitler's 80th birthday or something like that, and basically through like people inside the government or people inside the country are trying to sneak information out about the Holocaust, which is not generally known about. So they sneak information about the Holocaust and that it happened to her, and she's trying to get out of Germany and back to Britain before it's too late.
Huh.
So it's like a thriller type movie.
Man, I saw that probably 3 years ago, and that was I got probably like halfway through it, and then I just kind of stopped. But yeah, that was like one of the main first things, like the introduction into alternate history, because there's that, Man in the High Castle, and
Red Alert.
And yeah. So I guess we can. This is kind of a tiny little one, but oh well. What's your favorite social media platform and why? Mine's simple. I'm gonna say YouTube. Wait, does YouTube count as social media?
I mean, now you can send community posts, and
Yes,
you have followers, and you share stuff. So,
okay, I'm gonna say because it pays me, YouTube.
Same here.
But in terms of fun and actually not hating it, I'd say Reddit. Like that. I can't. Not Twitter. Definitely not Facebook. Or Snapchat or Instagram. I don't think I use any social media really.
And we all know you hate Discord.
I like Discord. Actually, I literally just use Discord for you, Tiger Star. That's it. That's why I haven't really like. That's literally it. I don't use ever since the server
The
went
spaghetti
complete-
incident.
Yeah.
Oh no, the spaghetti incident.
Ever
We are
since-
calling that the spaghetti incident.
Ever since the SpaghettiOs spilled, I kind of stopped using Discord a little bit. So I feel like maybe people have calmed down a little bit. Who knows? Who knows?
I spend a lot of time on Twitter, like a lot of time, and I think it's logarithmically every day driving me mentally ill. So
you need to stop that. I've seen.
I seem to be wrapped up in this group of people who hate Twitter, but also spend ridiculous amounts of time on it.
It's a love.
It's a necessary evil.
I mean, I will say at least it isn't Facebook, because the people that I know spend way more time on Facebook are actually way worse people than the people that spend their time on Reddit and Twitter. Like, I'm not saying that like, oh, your taste in social media is bad. I'm saying no. Like, there is something about Facebook that makes people repugnant. It actually twists them. It is weird how it does that.
Well, with Facebook, you're kind of obligated to friend anyone you've ever met remotely in your life, because otherwise it's considered like, oh, why didn't you friend me? I thought we were friends, or I thought I'm your distant family member.
I mean,
you should be friends with me. But Twitter, you're only following the people you want to follow.
I think Facebook, that might have been relevant probably like 3 years ago, but I think
if that
Facebook now I would say it's dying, or it's at least slowing down.
It reported its first year of negative growth in user numbers for an age demographic.
Yeah,
at least for North America.
I mean, because it's like the only people I ever see on Facebook. Like, I only use Facebook because I have my girlfriend on Messenger, and it's easier to use Messenger. And then I have my the guys I hang out with. We have a group chat.
Messenger's the thing bugging your phone.
Yeah, I know. I use it for the computer. I don't use
Still.
I have Facebook. Facebook I use for the group messages to organize the D&D games. That's like literally all I do.
I don't put any. Well, this is the thing about I would say information. I don't put anything like at all on my Facebook profile. I've never put my favorite food. I haven't shared an actual post on Facebook or typed one of those status things in a year and a half.
See, I remember first reading about Facebook sharing its information 6 years ago, and I deleted my Facebook then, and every post before deleting my actual account.
Yeah.
And I took the hour to do that. And now that it's 6 years later, it's like, told you guys.
Yeah. I would do it. It's just it's literally just because of Messenger. And I know that it has it tracks and stuff. But it's like
also,
maybe
if
WhatsApp. Oh wait, no, WhatsApp's owned by Facebook now. Shit.
Yep.
Nothing.
Because if people are upset at Facebook and want to get rid of their Facebook, they also have to get rid of WhatsApp and Instagram, because both of those things are owned by Facebook.
So unless we could literally just have text messages again, that'd be it.
Or Twitter, or Discord, or Skype.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many options out there.
But the problem is that like, no, there's only a few people I know that actually use Discord. Like, there's you guys, and that's it. Like,
every single person who has been a contact on my Skype, other than like one or two people, and whenever like a businessman needs to talk to me, they've all moved to Discord.
Yeah, well, I need once there is a way that I can successfully convince everyone, hey, let's get off of Facebook.
Let's all move back to Google Plus, everyone.
Yeah.
Google Plus, it's going to be the winner all along. This whole like knife fight's going to be over, and we're all just going to be G+ing each other.
No one figured out how to delete it, and that's why everyone still awkwardly has 5 different YouTube channels.
Oh yeah, and also, hey, political memes. We will end the stream when we want to end the stream. How about that? Let's say that. Say if we do read the chat, we read it. We just don't respond. That's the thing. Everybody's. I don't know why there's this thing that people say we don't read the chat. We do read the chat. There's no way that we can implement it into discussion unless we're bitching about the chat.
I read the chat.
Also, the The show is going to be syndicated, probably coming out on Saturday.
Wait, this show?
So if you came into the stream about halfway through, you can listen to the whole thing on Saturday.
We got syndicated to NBC, guys. We did it. A podcast about nothing.
Hey, those are the best. Those are the best podcasts.
Yes.
Anyway, I would say we probably. Let me think. What could we talk about next week in terms of?
Oh yeah, we need another scenario.
Yeah.
I kind of have an idea, but I feel like it would work better as like a video on Cody's channel. So
I mean, we could, but we did the Middle East thing, and then that's gonna be a video eventually. So
eventually.
Okay, the only reason the Middle East video has not came out yet is because of the book. But so, what is your idea?
There were several situations where the United States could have either purchased, annexed, or adopted a state that we just simply didn't do. Like, I don't mean something like the state of Jefferson. I mean like something like outside of the United States.
Which one would be that?
Well, there's several ones. There was the one time where we were offered to annex the Dominican Republic from Spain and make that a state, but President Grant said no. Then there was a time where Mexico was kind of falling apart, and there was a Yucatan Republic in the Yucatan Peninsula, and they applied for statehood in like the early 1840s, and we said, nah, like, things like that.
I love it. Let's do that. Okay, so next week will be us just talking about what if the U.S. basically took up all of these different states. And
some islands.
And some islands, and what would happen. Anyway, thank you everybody for actually, I'll say thank you to our super chats for contributing. Liprium, Sync98, Derek Tremel, Black Hole Sun 619, Steve Preston, Dab,
Wash away the rain.
Thomas Muhldorf, I got that right. Justice McGinnis, Michael Wade, Fake Mustache, Morphison, Evernant, Vinier KMS, sounds like a radio station. Vinier KMS, 313 God, Alex Canadian Air Cadets. Man, there are a lot of different people that contributed today. And then D Darb 69. Thank you all for your contributions. We will be back next week. And I'm Cody.
I'm Emperor Tiger Star.
And I'm StepBackHistory.com. I mean Tristan.
And this is StepBackHistory.com. Oh, wait. No, I meant... And this is So That Happened.